Hi, and welcome back to Clean Academy. I'm Tara Foley, and I'm joined today by Hyram Yarbro.
Hi.
Today, Hyram and I are going to talk all about how to read a beauty ingredient label and why it's really important to empower yourself to be able to do that. I'm the founder and CEO of Follain. I've been working on Follain for, almost 10 years by now. And at Follain, what we do is we curate from different brands of clean beauty, and we also create our own brand as well. Hyram, tell us a little bit about you.
My name is Hyram Yarbro. I'm a YouTube content creator, but I've worked in the industry for about 3 years. I started off in retail, I moved to brand education specialist, but now I focus on creating videos about skincare in order to help educate my audience about how they can be more mindful when choosing skincare products and ingredients.
So obviously ingredients matter so much.
Absolutely.
To both of us.
Yep.
So should we just dive right in?
Yep, let's go.
From my perspective, ingredients are the most important thing to consider when you're finding a skincare product for yourself, and any beauty product really. If you think about it, the average woman uses, like 11 products a day, which adds up to almost 200 ingredients a day.
That's crazy. With all the different products that we're using, it's really important to be mindful about the ingredients that they're formulated with. And not only for our own personal health, but also for the health of the planet as well.
I mean, honestly, one of the reasons why I started Follain, and one of the things that gets me most fired up about the beauty industry in the US, is that the FDA doesn't regulate the beauty industry for the most part. I mean, a company doesn't have to register a product when they make it and put it on the market. The FDA doesn't really regulate ingredients unless it's an over-the-counter product, like a sunscreen or acne product. And really, there's been no changes in the laws since the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in 1938.
And it can be really difficult finding which brands do have good ingredients, which brands have ingredients that may not be so good. So it really is up to the individual consumer to educate themselves about which ingredients they want to look for and which ingredients to avoid. So when it comes to shopping for a beauty product, there's a few different things that I look for in order to determine whether it's worth it or not. First of all, I want to see what the brand is, what their mission and values are, and how they align with my personal skincare philosophy. In addition to that, I also look at the packaging of the product. I want to make sure that it's as environmentally sustainable as possible. So I typically like to look for glass packaging because it can be recycled an infinite amount of times, and I can also reuse it for different things around the house. But if it is plastic packaging, I look at the label to make sure that I can recycle it after I'm completely finished with the product.
So step one for me is to make sure that it's free of those ingredients. Step two, but maybe the most important step, is to make sure that the product's actually effective and does what it claims to do. And the third thing kind of syncs up with where you started, Hyram, is that I want to make sure that the brand has values that I support and align with.
And when it comes to ingredients, words like clean, natural, organic are thrown around a lot, but when it comes to FDA regulation, they don't regulate those terms, which leaves the definitions of those terms up to the companies and individuals that are creating them, which makes it even more difficult for consumers when deciding which products they want to use.
You're so right, Hyram. Those terms, clean, green, natural, they're completely unregulated and anybody can use them. The only one that's truly regulated is organic. If you see the organic seal, so a certified seal, so like a USDA seal, or the brand couldn't use GMOs. It was basically pesticide free. And usually it's that 95% of the ingredients are organic in the product, which obviously is very difficult for a beauty product to achieve and also get the efficacy. So you don't see it very often.
So when it comes to companies and them using the word natural, usually I feel like what they mean is that the ingredients that they use are from natural extracts or natural oils. But the problem with this is that it can contribute to a conversation saying that natural is better, which is not always the case. And because it's not regulated, we don't know what percentage of natural ingredients are used in the actual product. It could be 1%, it could be 99%. But the problem is that we don't know, which makes the term natural kind of difficult for us to really wrap our minds around and be more informed customers about.
So Hyram, I'm really curious. What are the top 5 ingredients that you look for when you pick up a product?
Oh, this is speaking my language. So as far as ingredients to avoid is first denatured alcohol or SD alcohol, particularly because I do have a skin sensitivity to that, but also because in high concentrations, it can mean that you can have overly stripping effects as well as sensitivities. Secondly, I look through the entire ingredient list to see if fragrance is anywhere on it. The reason why is because fragrance is a term that's legally justified, allowing companies to be able to not disclose whichever ingredients that they use as fragrant components within the product. So under that term fragrance or parfum, you could potentially find 4,000 different ingredients, all of which are not disclosed on the product.
Because it's a trade secret, right?
Exactly, and that communicates a lack of transparency from the brand.
The ingredients that I try and focus on the most right now are ingredients like PEGs and high polysorbates. When you create them, have trace elements of 1,4-dioxane, and 1,4-dioxane's a known carcinogen. And so 1,4-dioxane is right now showing up in the water system in New York and all over the world right now, actually. But New York actually just banned it, which is amazing, really, really exciting. I also look for things like cyclic silicones. So silicones are usually in hair products, but they're also gonna be in like, you know, face products, anything that's kind of emollient. The environment doesn't know how to break down, basically. The last kind of ingredient type that I'm always trying to avoid and help others avoid would be certain chemical sunscreens. Those have obviously been getting a ton of press right now, but I'm not sure everybody knows why. And it's also because the environment doesn't know how to break it down, and neither do our bodies.
So as much as I try to avoid certain ingredients that could be potentially irritating or damaging to my skin, there's also a lot of ingredients that I personally like to look for. I have my favorite non-active ingredients. Biossance has one of my favorites, squalene. It's amazing for moisturizing, nourishing the skin, but I also like to look for active ingredients, so I'm talking glycolic acid, lactic acid, retinol alternatives, or retinol, things that are really gonna take care of specific issues that I'm looking to avoid within my skin. What are some of the ingredients that you look for?
You know, after all of these years, I've really started to hone in on what worked best for me. And some of those things are like rosehip oil.
I love rosehip oil.
Yeah, and pretty much I mean, rose water's in everything I use, really. I'm really into peptides right now. Bakuchiol, who knows how to pronounce it. But as a retinol alternative, I'm also into in a big way right now too.
So I know it can look really intimidating seeing a long ingredient list and not knowing what any of it means. And I was there, you were there once too. Every day is a process of learning about these ingredients. So how can you better learn about each of these ingredients? I personally did so by Googling every single ingredient and being able to learn where it's from, how it's extracted, the benefits that it has for the skin, as well as the negative side effects. What are some of the resources that you used?
So there are some awesome kind of NGOs and nonprofits out there that have dedicated their entire life's work to researching environmental toxicity and environmental health. EWG, they're actually an aggregator of research. There's organizations like Silent Spring, there's organizations like Beyond Benign that are going into schools to teach on green chemistry. And all of these people are experts on chemistry, on ingredient sourcing, on ingredient toxicity. And so I've basically surrounded myself with people like that over the years to try and learn what was good and bad. But when you look up an ingredient on a label for the first time, you're usually not gonna have to look it up again. I mean, if you look up, I don't know, sodium lauryl sulfate in your EWG app or your Think Dirty app, there's a good chance that it's gonna stick with you, okay, that was a pretty high number and not one that I wanna use. And so I would say just committing to basically doing it, and with reps, you're all of a sudden gonna be pretty far into your clean beauty journey. So this has been a great conversation, but I think now we're gonna go through some actual ingredient labels.
Yeah, I'm down.
So if I were to pick up this shampoo bottle off a shelf, it would make sense to me that water is the #1 ingredient. It's the vast majority of the product. But I wouldn't be psyched to see that SLS, or sodium lauryl sulfate, was the second ingredient, because that means that there's a ton of SLS in this product, and that's an irritant to the hair and scalp, and it's also an ethoxylated ingredient, which means it may contain traces of 1,4-dioxane.
And when it comes to reading an ingredient list, the way that it's listed is from highest concentration to lowest concentration. So whatever you find at the top of the ingredient list will be the most of the product, and whatever you find at the bottom of the list will be the least of the product. So the fact that sodium lauryl sulfate is the second ingredient communicates that the majority of what we are using is going to be that ingredient. And with those adverse side effects, it does make it a little bit problematic when reading this ingredient list.
Okay, so if I picked up this shampoo, I'd be pretty psyched, to be honest. The #1 ingredient is a water alternative that's quite nourishing and healing in aloe juice. So big difference from the start. And I don't see anything that's really jumping out at me as being harmful. And actually, on the flip side of that, I actually see a ton of super nourishing ingredients in here.
So some ingredients that I see I really like is first glycerin right here, which is a hydrating ingredient. It's also a humectant, which means it's gonna draw moisture from the air into your hair. I also see macadamia nut oil, which is a really hydrating oil that's good for nourishing the hair as well.
And one thing to note about this ingredient list is that there's a lot of really long names that are clearly synthetics. They're, synthetic chemicals. Not all synthetic chemicals are bad. I mean, it depends on how they're made. And, I'm personally an advocate of green chemistry and making synthetics in a safe way for people and planet. And honestly, if you're doing it that way, they can be like really, really great in products like this.
Yeah, it's a good balance of both.
So I think it's probably worthwhile talking about some of the misconceptions when it comes to these big, long ingredient names in beauty, because they're not all bad.
No.
Not all chemicals are bad, not all synthetics are bad. And honestly, some of those ingredients, when they're made in a safe way, are what's leading to effective products. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I do think that's a big misconception that if you can't pronounce an ingredient on the back of a label that you shouldn't use it. There are tons of amazing ingredients out there, both of which have short names and long names that you want to look for in an ingredient list. And just because it is a chemical does not mean it's bad at all. But with practice and repetition and going to those sources that are beneficial for teaching you about each of those ingredients, you'll be able to learn more and more which to look for and which to avoid.
Right, and another misconception I know of is that a product, if it doesn't have like an active ingredient, that it might not be effective.
That is another big one that I see a lot because we are so used to wanting to look for active ingredients, wanting to see the goodies, the interesting ingredients that are going to give us instant results. But those ingredients, while they are great for getting rid of short-term issues that we want to, take care of, this is skincare. It's about maintaining the health of your skin. So non-active ingredients are really amazing for doing just that, maintaining the health while supplementing those active ingredients when you need them. So while it's amazing that you're learning all of this knowledge about how to look for ingredients that are good or not good and products that you should buy, it's also important that you are spreading this information with the people that you know and love, because we can really make this into an entire movement of more education surrounding skincare.
I couldn't agree more, because honestly, it's great if you and I stop using ingredients like SLS or any of the ones that we've discussed today. But it's not until everybody stops using those ingredients that there's going to be real change, because honestly, the ingredients that somebody uses goes down the drain and into the water system, and it's affecting us all. Awesome. Well, we've learned so much today.
Yeah.
And thank you, Hyram. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, of course. I've loved this. I'm always in support of more skincare education.
And you can find more videos on Biossance's YouTube channel and even more resources at cleanacademy.com.